Hi, guys. I'm Maria and I'm an alcoholic. Hello. Thank you, Sarah, for asking me to speak. Welcome to everyone who is new or new to our meeting or who's coming back. You guys are the most important people in the room and you keep me sober. So my sobriety date is January 8th, 2014. I celebrated 8 years this past year, and that made it that I have been sober longer than I drank, which is a miracle because I was a pretty run-of-the-mill alcoholic. I drank a lot. I was a binge drinker. I was a blackout drinker. And alcohol was pretty much my world, my first love, and my everything. And so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about what that was like and what happened and how I got here. But a couple more qualifications, I guess. I do have a sponsor. They're here trolling somewhere in the meeting. And she has a sponsor. And I do sponsor other women in this program. A couple of them I know I sponsor them. Some of them I'm not sure if I sponsor them, but by name I sponsor them. But I do have a couple who still call me. And this is my home group. It has been my home group long before the pandemic in 2019, when this was still a small meeting. And 5D has been monumental in my sobriety. So I'm very grateful for this meeting. Anyways, yeah, like I said, I was a pretty run-of-the-mill drunk. So, I mean, there's nothing that special about my story except that I should be dead and I'm not. That's pretty much like the most special thing about my story. I grew up, I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. And that's where I got sober for the first 5 years. I, have a pretty good childhood, especially for what you hear in the rooms. I, was just kind of born with the isms, I suppose. They say it's a family disease. Neither of my parents are alcoholics, but it does run on my mom's side, the Irish side. I'm half Sicilian and half Irish. Look out. And the Irish side is the alcoholic side. I'm not saying that that's a thing, but alcoholism does run on that side. My grandfather, my mom's dad, got sober on August 19th, 1963. And he was very active in AA and was actually a circuit speaker. But he died when I was 1. So I, didn't get to, know any of that until well after I got sober. But I got to after I got sober, and I was given his big book and his 12 and 12, and I have some of his coins and stuff, and I've felt him with me throughout my sobriety. It's been pretty cool. And then there's also people in my family who haven't made it into the rooms because of this disease. So I feel very lucky. For young people's, as far as young people's meetings go, I feel like I got started pretty late. But drinking always kind of fascinated me. It really fascinated me how grown-ups would drink some stuff and be different. It like really intrigued me. I was like, what, how does that work? It's like they would like loosen up and it was like suddenly they were different. And that fascinated me because from before I can even remember, I was not okay with who I was. And I was, as early as I can remember, always living in a state of fear, a fear of not being good enough, a fear of not saying the right thing, a fear of failing, um, a fear of not fitting in, always feeling like I'm on the outside looking in. I never felt like I was in my own skin. Um, you know, things we often hear in the rooms. So the fact that these people were drinking something and it made them seem different than themselves super intrigued me, which like should have told that was like the sign right there. That's doom was in my future when it came to alcohol. Um, so I didn't really take my first like drunk drink until I was 16. And even then I didn't really start drinking alcoholically until really until I was in college. I binge drank in high school on the weekends, but I was like so living in fear my whole life. I was, I was really scared of getting caught, so I had really good alibis on the weekends in high school. It's actually really funny. My one of my alibis for where I was when I was drinking in high school, that friend's house, her brother ended up being one of my best friends in sobriety years later. Um, but it was like a full circle moment. But I was so afraid of, failing my parents, that I only drank on the weekends, and only drank when we had like a specific time to drink. I didn't become like, a drink every night and go crazy kind of person, yet. Um, but when I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about when the next time was that I was going to get to drink. But then I went to college, and I went away to college, and I was on my own for the first time, and I went to a party school, and then it was off to the races. Like Bill said in his story when he went to the stock market, it was off to the races for Maria. And pretty much from freshman to my senior year, I went from blending in with all the other college kids to frat boys were telling me maybe I shouldn't drink so much. I was drinking every night by the fifth. And, I had already I made it through a toxic relationship. I burned a lot of bridges. I had very few friends by the time I graduated. I managed to graduate with honors because I was a functioning alcoholic. I still made it to class and got decent enough grades to graduate with honors. I went to class drunk a few times, but still pulled it off. And so I started doing things that I wouldn't think of to do in any like sober, sound of mind Maria state. I was betraying my friends. I was stealing. I was lying. I was causing harm. I was causing harm to myself. I was doing really terrible things. I there was these group of guys who literally would not let me in their house. And I actually, one of those guys, the guy who would not let me in the door, I saw at a wedding this past fall. And I was like, so it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh no, like, oh. And he made it a point to come up to me and tell me that like he's like seen here and there, like, like how much I've changed and all the improvements I made in my life. And anyway, he like said he's like really proud of me for everything I've done. And it's like, basically he like told me it's clear that like I've changed and all this stuff. And I had this moment of vindication with him. And it was like, I was like, huh? Because he was a friend of my ex's. So I never thought that would happen. And it was really cool. And I had one of my best friends, I hooked up with her boyfriend. And her, I ended up making amends to her when I got sober. Um, but we were in different states, so I didn't get to do it face to face. But then a couple years ago, we ended up being in the same wedding together, and we just magically ended up being the only sober people at that wedding because she was pregnant and I was obviously sober. And it was like the after party of the wedding, and we were just sitting there, and it just like super naturally came up because even though I had made amends, I still like something just felt like that I still needed to clear something up. And she had told me that she like struggled with something personally, and so I like shared something, and she told me how proud she was of me. And so I pretty much like reiterated my amends to her in person, and it was like just this huge weight that's like was lifted off of me. So it was like these really awful, terrible things that I did when I was drinking in college, when I was, this horrible person in my disease, that like later on in my sobriety, that like my higher power just like literally gave me literally years later, that I like never even like expected. Just little like drops that I never would have gotten if it hadn't been for this program. I know I'm like all over the place, so I apologize. I'm really tired. So like I said, I managed to graduate. Like every good alcoholic, I moved back in with my parents and became a bartender. That clearly went very well. It just led me straight to my bottom, essentially. I call 2013 the year of infamy. I was in the hospital all the time. I OD'd a couple times. That was one of the times that I should be dead. I've had several doctors like look me in the face when I tell them what happened and be like, you should be dead. You know that, right? And I'm like, yes, I have heard that before. Like, and I don't take that lightly. And but at the time I took it very lightly. And I had in that year, I was forced into IOP and learned what alcoholism was. We went over the doctor's opinion, and I learned about the allergy. And part of me, I was excited because I was like, oh, this makes sense now. This makes sense why I can't drink like my friends. This makes sense now why once I start, I can't stop, and why I keep blacking out and ending up in these ridiculous situations, and why my friends can party and be insane too, but they still somehow don't end up as bad as I do. So it was nice in a way because I felt like I got an answer, but also I was like, I don't want to be an alcoholic. So I found out what the disease, and I really didn't, as much as it sucked to hear that I was an alcoholic, I never really like fought it within myself. I was like, yeah, this makes sense that I'm one of those, but I wasn't ready to stop. I still thought I was like the freaking jaywalker. I was all the freaking Freds and Jims in the book. Like I was like, there's something I can do. I've got it. I've got it. There's like something, there's gonna be some way that I can get this myself and not have to give this up, because this is all I've got. It was pretty bleak. And at the end of 2013, what finally did it, that got me into the rooms. I have a younger sister. My friend and I were in Kansas City visiting her where she goes to school. And we went on our own, did our own thing, and she was with her boyfriend. And I get a call. We had started drinking, and I get a call from my dad. And if anyone knows me, my younger sister is everything to me. And I'm like a very cliche older sister where I'm like, if you hurt her, you are dead. Like I will kill you. But at the time, I was very deep into my disease. And I get a call from my dad, and the first thing he asks is, "Are you drunk right now?" Because they just knew I was always going to be drunk at that time. And I was, but I lied. He said, "Your sister's been in a car accident. You need to take her to the hospital." And I will always remember this moment for as long as I live. And anytime I'm pretty lucky that I have a pretty strong first step. But anytime I ever have any doubt that I'm an alcoholic, I just have to think back to this. I didn't think, "Oh my God, my sister's been in a car accident. Is she okay?" The very first thought that went through my head was, "God damn it, I don't get to get drunk now." It was literally the first thought that went through my head. So I found out, she just had some whiplash and needed to go. So, I did what, the best solution to both issues. And I grabbed a fifth on the way to the hospital. And I ended up drinking an entire fifth of vodka in the ER with my sister and her boyfriend. And long story short, I got dropped off at my friend's house. My sister told me she hated me and never wanted to see me again. My parents were done with me. I was done with me. No one hated me as much as I hated me at that moment. And I had previously been 12-stepped by a girl my mom knew, who was my age but had gotten sober when she was 17. And she had, told me about young people's meetings. And told me her story. And I texted her and I was like, "Hey, I really need to go to a meeting. Can we go to a meeting?" And she was like, "Yeah." So I went to my first young people's meeting, and I walked in the room and everyone was my age, and they were like smiling and they knew each other. And walking up to that church with people smoking outside was like the scariest freaking moment of my life. It was like shaking. But everyone seemed to feel comfortable there. Everyone seemed to like feel good in their skin. It seemed very unfamiliar to me. But as soon as it started and people started talking, I knew that this is where I needed to be. I still had one more drink in me because I wasn't getting sober for myself. I was getting sober for my family. And I didn't do the things that we are taught to do. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't start working steps. I was literally just going to meetings. And that's it. I was I was going to meetings and saying it was my first meeting every single time. I don't know why. I don't know why I did that, but I did. And my last drink was on December 8th, 2013. And it was literally like the description in the book. A drink was in front of me, and literally I was literally like, I'm going to not drink I was at a concert, Backstreet Boys concert. And I was like, I'm not going to drink at this concert tonight. And literally a drink was in front of me, and without a second thought I grabbed it and drank it. And all of a sudden I was like, how did this happen? And then I just got home that night, and I wasn't even that drunk, but I had that moment of clarity, and I grabbed it and I was like, I think I'm done now. And from that moment on, I walked into the rooms and I looked at these people and I was like, literally whatever you tell me to do, I'll do, because I am so freaking desperate. I am an alcoholic and I cannot do this anymore because I am out of options here. Like, I don't want to be like, I could not care less if I died, but I'm like not also like too lazy to actually do anything about it. I'm dangerous to me and to others, and I just don't want to drink anymore. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I was literally willing to do whatever those people in that room told me to do. So I got a sponsor and I started working the steps, and I was going to meetings all the time till this program became something that like almost felt like a second job at the time. And it became a way of life for me, and it became something I wanted to do because I started feeling better. I was fellowshipping and people became my friends, and like I was laughing, and like people cared about me. They like cared if I was there, and they like smiled and laughed, and it was like something I had never felt before. And luckily when I got there, I had a really easy first step. At that point I was really fine with admitting powerlessness and, writing out all the ways I was powerless. And two um 2 and 3 are like ongoing steps for me. They weren't as super hard to swallow for me as they are for a lot of people in the rooms. But 3 is something I have to do every single day when I wake up in the morning. I wake up every morning with untreated alcoholism, and like we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. It's not like you do it and you're done. Step 3 is done. It's like I make a decision to do that every single day. And that's usually the one that I have to work on pretty rigorously. And so anyway, I've gotten really involved in service through the years. I got really involved in YPAW in St. Louis. And we did a conference. We did MOSCPAW, the Missouri State Conference of Young People in AA. We did a bid for 2 years, and then we won the bid, and then we put on a conference. So we were together for 3 years, and those people became my best friends. And then in 2018 going to 2019, I decided I was finally going to move to New York. That was the plan for me since college. And my sponsor had helped me like figure out my life shit to do that. And so I was finally able to do that. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done because I have the best support system in St. Louis, like the best. But I did it, and I'm doing it to, one of my friends at my last home group meeting before I left St. Louis, one of my friends shared and goes, I don't know a lot of people who just like drop everything and move to a big city to pursue their dreams. Like, I don't know a lot of people who do that. And the fact that I get to do that is like a miracle. Like, I don't take that lightly. And I know I'm like out of time, so I'm trying to like brush through here. But so, I've gotten a lot of cool things. I'm like, I'm 32 years old and I have my own apartment in New York City and a cat. I have a really cool life. I don't obsess about drinking. But life is not all sunshines and rainbows. I have outside issues that make my life really difficult a lot of the time. But the really cool thing about that is I've had like some of my hardest times in sobriety, my lowest points because of my outside issues. And it's actually because of this program and my sobriety that I was able to get the help I needed for my outside issues. And not once, as painful as those times were, not once did I ever think about picking up a drink. I thought about not wanting to be here, but I didn't think about drinking. And that is a miracle for someone who used to drink as much as I did. And I was also able to get the outside help that I needed to because of the people and the tools that I have in this program. This program teaches me just how to live now, like once you get through over the obsession to drink and that lifts after you do the steps, you just get tools of how to live your life. And you don't really get that in many other places. So, as difficult as life can be sometimes, you have a solution here and you have people who have been through it. And you know, when I go through difficult things, I know that I can take that and give that to someone else to help them through, because people help me through it. And I'm over my time, so I'm going to shut up now, but I'm really grateful for all of you, and keep coming back. Thanks.